Well, I did just want to ask you two last things about Vince. One was something that I don't know if a lot of people are talking about. If he sells the company, you would imagine he would want to sell it to the entity or the company that he thinks is most likely to allow him to be in charge because he still wants to do this. Do you think that he would sell to Saudi Arabia knowing that people like John Cena and The Rock might not want to have anything to do with them anymore if they're owned by the Saudis? Do you think that will either of those factors will play into who he ends up selling to?
Well, for a different reason, yes. But here's the thing. First of all, I'm not like a lot of people are now assuming that, well, Vince going to sell it to whoever will let him continue to run it. And I don't know what's that, because again, Vince, he's maniacal and egomaniacal, but he's also a harsh, cruel realist. And if somebody hit him with, well, Vince, I want to buy this company for $6 billion, but I don't want a man that's nearly 80 to be running it because I have to think about our future. He would probably have hit with that. I mean, he'd talk, well, my genes, palate, I'm working out. But the reality of that might get to him. But at the same time, the only reason I can think that he might not want to sell to the Saudis, being just a realist, is that would get so much negative backlash on and cause so many stumbling blocks for them for television in this country and or any, in a lot of places around the world, and negative PR and anti goodwill and wrestlers complaining, which would be negative for the company? Or does he want the $6 billion so that he can say that the young troubled child from a trailer park in North Carolina, somebody handed him $6 billion for his life's work, and he said, fuck y'all, now I'll just do something completely different. So I can see him potentially looking at who sells it based on how successful they could be continuing the product, or I could see him going, you know what, I'm gonna take the biggest dollar number on Final Jeopardy and fuck it. And a lot of people also, I'll just make this point, and you can go on to your next one, are saying that when the Saudi panic broke out overnight last week or whenever, and people assumed because it was reported the deal was done that, and I heard there was even panic in the NXT locker room, but they were still there on that Tuesday night when that came out. And oh shit. And they're taking up sides like, well, I'll quit. Well, I'll stay, whatever. And it was all bullshit. You can't do something with a publicly traded company that quick under cover of darkness. But the question becomes, it's been reported that Triple H and Stephanie were against a sale of the company. Now it could, but nobody's clarified that. Were they against a sale in principle to anybody? Or were they against that particular fucking sale to the Saudis? Or some another particular sale that has not been brought to light that was pitched to them. We've never heard that behind the scenes report that they were just said, no, goddamn, we're keeping this fucking thing. We're putting it in a drawer with Aunt Fanny's quilt she made. It just potentially may be a certain sale that they didn't agree with. And it seems coincidental that Stephanie, as soon as Vince is back, but before the vote where he's elected executive chairman of the board, Stephanie not only resumes her leave of absence, but kicks it up a notch with her resignation from the entire fucking company. And then she's off the board of directors, resigns from the board of directors, and then they have a vote unanimously that Vince is the, yeah. You see, don't you see there, Kenny?
Well, listen, my last question for you is, you were around Vince for a long time in the 90s, and I wondered, what story do you have about Vince that you think encapsulates who he is the most?
You know what? I brought this up again here recently because everybody was talking about a potential, and I may lead you down a path here for a second.
Sure.
talking about what about the Khans? What about Tony and Shad? They might buy it. And somebody even said that Tony had said they were open to a merger between AEW and WWE. Okay, that's like a little sidewalk chip shop merging with, what's the biggest restaurant chain in the UK? See, you're over there. I can't do references. They won't be as funny. But nevertheless, the point is, it's not about how much money you have as to whether or not you can buy something. Doesn't mean it'll be successful if you're running it, right? I could buy, if I had $100 billion, I could buy every, football club in the Premier League, right? Am I doing this right?
Yeah.
But
I mean, you may need a bit more money than that, but yeah.
Well, whatever. But I wouldn't know how to run them because so. What Vince is good at, and traditionally has been good at, and why he outlasted Crockett, and why he outlasted the WCW Turner Attitude Era days, and why, etc., is because he has a innate. He came up around the wrestling business, even though he wanted to change it. He's got an innate understanding of how to promote it and/or publicize and promote things of that nature. And he puts the right people in charge of shit. I made this as when Twitter came out. I'm sure that Vince McMahon didn't know what goddamn Twitter was. He didn't have time for it. I can't see him looking at a goddamn cell phone all day when there's work to be done, right? On Twitter. But I guarantee you that he had somebody in the office in Stamford that knew everything there was to know about Twitter, and they started a Twitter, right? And it goes down to the old story that I told. I was there one time, me and Bruce Pritchard and Vince McMahon at his dining room table at his house in Stamford, or in Greenwich, actually, writing television formats, knock on the door. In comes the cable repairman, and Vince says, "Right back there, pal, in the study. There's no sound." And the guy walked in. He comes back 45 seconds later with the remote control in his hand, and he says, "Yes, sir. See this button here that says mute?" And Vince, "Okay, thank you." And he wheeled off a $100 bill and handed it to the guy, and he was gone. Vince McMahon owns a $6 billion multimedia corporation. At the time, it was worth tens of millions of dollars. This was 1997 or whatever. It doesn't mean he was the smartest motherfucker about everything in the world. He had network television shows. He didn't know how to work the cable remote. But God damn it, everybody in that office knew how to do their fucking job. The marketing, the merchandising, the legal, the contracts, the fucking lawyers, everybody in that the production. He had, a network television studio there, quality studio. So that's the thing. Vince is the sharpest guy at being on top of his business. And if he knows how to ask anybody the 5 questions that he needs to know to make a decision about something, and he's crazy about booking and creative, and he's lost his mind the past few years or whatever, but that's why he's been where he's been for so long, is because he runs that level of business. And he longer and harder, and to the detriment of everybody around him's personal life, he's on top of that shit. That's his superpower or whatever. And that's why he's fixing to get $5 or $6 billion from some sucker.
I remember seeing a WrestleMania graphic for the main event of WrestleMania, and you see the still shot, and it was Triple H versus Chris Jericho with Stephanie McMahon. But instead of Stephanie McMahon's being behind me, she was in the front and I was behind her. I remember calling Kevin down and going, "Dude, I'm the champion. Like, I get what's going on, but you gotta change that graphic.